on a very interesting topic. Just to say in two lines about the Madras Chamber, it's a 185-year, should I say, young chamber, because we keep aligned to the current changing dynamic needs of the members. So I would prefer to call ourselves 185 years young chamber. We are the oldest chamber of southern India and the second oldest in the country. We would have been a twin chamber with Bombay chamber had we born probably 1 week ahead. But still, in age, we feel 1 week doesn't matter. So I could also say that we are the oldest chamber in the country. And we also won an award in 2017 as a responsible business membership organization chamber out of 150 chambers and trade promotion bodies participating in a Government of India program. We got the award. That probably is because of all the support of the members, the governing council, and expert committees here. And we have been doing a number of activities. I'm not going into detail with the other thing. At least for gender and women empowerment, we have been doing quite a lot of interesting activities in the past. At least we can say one or two could be. One is the Women Director Forum. We were the forerunner. Dr. Ravi knows when the company law and the corporate law insisted women should be there as independent directors, and when we looked around and thought not very many women were available to take up that position, we decided we would step in and have this program organized for women. The other interesting program we had exclusively for women, I can say, is what we did, She Leads, with the British High Commission. That was a program to identify women leaders in the age group of 18 to 24. And around 2,000 women all over the country participated, primarily looking at college students and people who have just graduated, to get their ideas and to make them become leaders in future. Could be political, could be a civil society organization leader, whatever their field. And after many rounds of selection, we chose 15 potential leaders and gave intensive training. These are some of the things to quote. But we are here today because of our Women Business Council, which was launched on 13th March, and it was launched by Ms. Malika Srinivasan, CMD of TAFE, and more interestingly, the first woman president of the Madras Chamber. In fact, the Madras Chamber was probably had the first woman as a president, even other than the national chambers. And this is the first program under the Women Business Council, and we have the chairperson, Bhavani Balasubramaniam, who is here, who is all going to moderate the session. So basically, we have wonderful panelists. I'm not getting into the details of the subject because we know they say if you want something said, ask a man. If you want something done, ask a woman. My male colleagues here would excuse me. It's not my words. It's Margaret Thatcher's words. But just now, even before the start of the program, I think Mr. Kesavan was making a mention something similar. So we are here to make something happen, and we have the very laudable objectives as we move forward. A lot of things we are looking forward to have through the Women Business Council. This panel discussion is the first one. Again, they say a woman is like a tea bag. Unless she's put in the hot water, we don't know how strong she is. And especially in this challenging times, when every leader is facing that thing, women have a sort of more challenges before her as a leader, and also to make it inclusive, because there is always a connection between the women representation in the board and the workplace, this one, comfort for the women. So it requires a lot of things, and here we have three distinct leaders to talk about it. Let me take the pleasure of welcoming the wonderful panelists. Ms. Jayanti Vaidyanathan, Senior Director, PayPal India. Welcome, Ms. Jayanti. Ms. Ritu Singh, IT Global Service and Delivery IT Governance Head, Adani Group. Welcome, Ritu. And our friend Ms. Gauri Kailasram, President of Rani Madras Limited Steering and Linkage Division. Welcome, Gauri. And we also have, as I said, an excellent panelist, moderator, Ms. Bhavani Balasubramaniam. She is currently the chairperson of the Women Business Council, and she is also the Chief Strategist and Diversity Evaluation of Avatar, a well-known organization working for women empowerment and women development. And I also welcome Mr. Kesavan, T.R. Kesavan, our Vice President of Madras Chamber. As I said, we really want to be inclusive in the program. So we are happy that he accepted to join us and propose the vote of thanks at the end. And all the WBC council members, all the general committee members, Dr. Ravi and others, and of course, all the participants. I would stop here, request Ms. Bhavani to take over, give an introduction, and then we will straight get into the business of discussion. Thanks, everyone. Over to you, Bhavani.
Thanks for your very kind words, Saraswati. Good afternoon, friends. It's a pleasure being with you all today on this most dreamt of first program of our Women's Business Council. On behalf of my co-chair Madhuri and myself, it is a great pleasure to be with you all and discuss on one of the important topics on inclusive leadership in challenging times. Inclusive leadership is not a destination. It's a journey that requires humility, curiosity, and courage, Satya's compoint. Various leadership styles have had their impact in crisis management. We've seen it. But several researchers have emphasized on the importance of leadership behavior in building and sustaining a diverse workforce in challenging times. Inclusive leadership reflects a new way of leading teams, looking beyond traditional leadership, and involves the uniqueness in leaders to treat people and groups fairly, personalize individuals and their potential, and leverage diversity of thinking by promoting ideation. The invisibility of inclusion, the salience of exclusion, and the coexistence of both inclusion and exclusion pose a challenge to all leaders. Managing both is possible for leaders by paying attention to human elements, monitoring programs, initiatives, challenges, and setbacks. These, if successfully done, the world would be an enabled world where there is equality and equity. Based on a study by the Australian HR consultant Juliet Brooke and Harvard, inclusive leaders are expected to have 6 signature traits. It's called the 6 C's. The commitment to inclusion by practicing, advocating, and demonstrating inclusion, because staying committed to inclusion is hard. The second competency is courage, challenging the status quo, speaking up, and personally taking the risk to call out non-inclusive behavior. The third competency Juliet has identified is cognizance of bias, being mindful and being aware of one's own biases. Curiosity, having an open mind to different ideas and experiences. Cultural intelligence, because not everyone is in the same cultural frame. Collaboration, diversity of thinking, which is most essential for success. The years gone by, like no other, are marked by HR, business, social, and economic crises. Companies and leaders are in a frenzy trying to protect the top line and safeguard people. While the pandemic has exposed fragility of commercial establishments, it has presented an opportunity to all leaders to stand tall and show their character in the face of extreme despair. The HR strategist Daisy Auger Dominic said, now it is the time for leaders to think about what type of leader they need to be for all their workers. As we move from rapid response to short to long-term recovery, community, connection, allyship, including a deep awareness about how implicit biases shows up in decision making, all become the more critical competencies for leadership. There are 3 aspects of crisis leadership from the business framework: reflect, respond, and reframe. Applying that to inclusive leadership competencies, commitment would mean in this pandemic to all segments of diversity to make them feel included. Having the courage to speak up and engage with talent to share the not so good news. Cognizance of bias, being more mindful of their actions. Curiosity, to have an open mind to new ideas. And being flexible in terms of new ways of work and encouraging adjustments, cultural intelligence to understand and empathize with each one's situation as each one is in a different cultural circumstance. Collaborate with each other, close and remote, to promote team spirit, to share their experiences, and to be explaining about their exciting journey of successful inclusive leadership. We have a great panel today. And let me ask Madhu to introduce the panelists to you all.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bhavani. I'm Madhu here. I'm the Deputy Secretary of the Chamber. I have great pleasure in introducing today's panelists. First, I would like to start with the moderator for the session, Ms. Bhavani. Ms. Bhavani Balasubramaniam is a chartered accountant and corporate company secretary by profession and inclusion leader by position at Deloitte. She is a former partner of Deloitte Haskins and Sell and Fraser and Ross Chartered Accountants. She has over 4 decades of experience in audit of listed and large corporates. She is currently the Chief Strategist Diversity Evaluation Avatar. In her role as inclusion leader for Deloitte India, she's led various inclusion initiatives and has been a member of the Asia Pacific Inclusion Council as India's representative for Deloitte India. She is currently the chairperson of the Women's Business Council of the Madras Chamber. As for the panelists, I'll begin with Ms. Gauri Kailasam, President of Rane Madras Limited Steering and Linkage Division. Ms. Gauri Kailasam has over 2 decades of rich experience in the areas of quality assurance and systems, operation management, environment, and business planning, serving engineering and automotive companies. She started her career in Ford Motor Company USA and worked in various Ford locations across both US, China, UK, and India. In Rane Limited as General Manager TQM, she has been instrumental in winning the Deming Prize and Deming Grand Prize. She's passionate about teaching and actively participates in activities of the industry associations and is also a member of the governing council of various educational institutions. Ms. Gauri Kailasam has completed her chemical engineering from Coimbatore Institute of Technology and a master's in chemical engineering from Wayne State University, US, and MBA from Open University Business School, UK. Now for Ms. Ritu Singh, she is the Group Head IT Governance Adani Enterprises Limited. Ms. Ritu Singh has 24 plus years of experience in delivering optimal results and business value while spearheading IT delivery and strategy, operations and service delivery functions. She has worked with reputed organizations across diverse industries like pharma, manufacturing, FMCG, IT and ITES. She has her MBA in IT and HR from Dr. C.V. Raman University, Chhattisgarh, and BTech Computer Science and Engineering from REC Jalandhar, Punjab. She is a strong believer of the fact that if there is a problem, there's bound to be a solution. We just need to find it. She lives by the philosophy of this too shall pass. I think that's a very positive note, especially during the pandemic. Now for Ms. Jayanti Vaidyanathan, Senior Director and Head of Human Resources, PayPal in India. Ms. Jayanti is a senior director and head of human resources, and she leads the site HR VP's community across APAC in PayPal. Under her leadership, PayPal India has been named as one of the best places to work for the last 12 consecutive years by the Great Places to Work Institute. During her 20 plus years of diverse experience in human resources, Ms. Jayanti has led organizations through transformation and growth. She is the recipient of the Most Powerful HR Professionals of India Award by the World HRD Congress, and in her leadership, our organization has been the recipient of multiple awards that speak of the next-gen practices, inclusive culture at PayPal. Ms. Jayanti holds a graduate degree in law and a postgraduate degree in personnel management from MSW and an executive management program from IIM Kozhikode. Thank you, Ms. Gauri, Ms. Ritu Singh, and Ms. Jayanti for joining us today. Over to you, Ms. Bhavani, for the session. Thank you.
Welcome once again, all panelists. We want a culture that is inclusive to everyone and where everyone feels that they have opportunities to succeed and grow. And I'm sure during the pandemic, you as inclusive leaders would have lived by this objective. Let's start by getting your views, each of you, on how does one sustain and prioritize inclusive leadership even during extraordinary times like now. So Gauri, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you, Bhavani. Needless to say, thank you first for giving me the opportunity to be with you all today. Thank you, MCCI. It's always a pleasure to be with you, Bhavani, and Saraswati, and the rest of the MCCI. That's a good question that you asked. These 2 years have been very difficult for all of us as leaders. And we've been facing this, or we've been talking about a VUCA world, and we've heard of it in theory. But right now, we are all living through it. Every day, something is different. Every day, our responses have to be different. But this is a good thing that is happening to us as in organizations, as industry, everywhere. One thing is good because now we have learned how to manage through difficult times. And during these times, we had great difficulty in trying to satisfy our customers, in trying to keep our people motivated, trying to keep our lines running. So because I come from a manufacturing background, it was also a very difficult ethical problems I had. Here we had to have all our operators having to come to office, whereas we as management staff were sitting at home and working and protecting ourselves. There are two ways to look about it. One way is to think about it as a differentiation. So therefore, we are not being inclusive. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is to say that, hey, this was an opportunity to reduce the risks of so many people and reduce the risk of the society. So we at least contributed by reducing the risk by not going out. So one of the things that we did during this time is, of course, this was an opportunity for us to learn how this process of work from home works. Because in a manufacturing industry, we're never used to this work from home. And I don't think 2 years ago, if anybody told that you could run the organization working from home, I would have never believed that. I would have never believed that's possible at all. But today it is possible. So this opens a great opportunity for all of us as leaders to see how we can learn from this and bring in more women and have the inclusivity, because working from home is possible. So what are the things that we would want to do in terms of flexibility? What is that we want to do to ensure there's equality in employment is something that we can all consider as leaders and see what we can move ahead. Further, we'll keep talking about it.
So Jayanti, would you like to address this on what one should sustain and prioritize in inclusive leadership?
Sure. Thanks so much, Bhavani. And again, thankful to Madras Chamber of Commerce for having us, and very, very happy to be, with all of you and sharing the stage with such, wonderful people. So as Gauri said, I think these times have been the maximum learning for us. If I consider my HR career all these years, I think the last 2 years has given me a very different dimension to how we practice HR. How, not only as HR professionals, but as leaders, how it enabled us to reimagine our ways of working, right? It also enabled us to get creative about how we drive our programs. What we always held close to our ethos and values, kind of rejigging some of those programs, and most critical of all, as you rightly called out, was leadership, Bhavani. To me, inclusive leadership stands on the platform of acceptance fundamentally, accepting everything as is and being able to manage your teams with that acceptance. And most important was also around that acceptance was that one size does not fit all. And hence, one customized solution benefits program, does not solve for all. It has to be really, really individualized. If we had to stay ignorant and believe all our existing products, policies, and practices would have solved the needs of such unprecedented times, we would have really been blindfolded and not yielded right results. It's amazing to hear from Gauri and hear experiences of other companies and people in terms of how each of us reimagined, our newer work from, home paradigms, and how we sustained our business. So I think for us at paper, I would say a few things that really worked for us. We all talk about enabling people to bring their true selves to work. That is really I think the DNA or value that, leaders, HR professionals bring to the table. And that became very real in the last 1.5 years. How do you then enable people to bring their own emotions, their own dependencies, etc., which are very unique in such extraordinary times? These differences became even more pronounced. So a few things. One, for us, we prioritize listening, not only to our customers, but also to our employees through our weekly wellness surveys and customized programs. While many were grateful that they didn't have to commute to us a day, I mean, we did a complete work from home, and many were glad that they didn't have to commute as much, but with the lines of office and home blurring, we needed to offer new solutions, like, focus days, where you absolutely have no meetings. Sometimes we beat ourselves to death through meetings. So we did absolutely no meeting days to help our product and our technologies work on priorities, right? We also looked at it flipped the leadership model in my view. We were guided by our employees and our employee resource groups, that enable us find the right solutions. Secondly, I think we had to cater to different groups with different strokes, right? It's not the time-tested models of diversity that we know around gender or around LGBTQ plus or around disabilities, etc. But it really had to be about each and every individual, right? Women, of course, had to juggle with more excruciating issues around work-life balance. So we did some exclusive programs. For instance, we took a call that we will not do any performance ratings the last year, for example, because we knew life was not the same balance for everybody. We extended our, what we call our employee assistance program support, because there are different contexts with different individuals. Some had people, their own suffering with COVID, bereavement issues. So we created our employee advocacy team, which would coach and guide people as a trusted confidant, dealing with their personal situations, turbulent times, bereavement support, stress, job losses, emotional wellness of their family members, and so on. We looked at other programs to enhance our overall offering, right? Like your PTO wasn't good enough. You needed to cater to extended leaves of absence due to COVID, extended leaves of absence that people had to manage people in their family, right? Elders, children. So we looked at crisis leave. We looked at policies around flexibility. We looked at enabling managers to put no collaboration times, no meeting times, personal times for people. Like every other company, we also provided the benefits of reimbursement of home office setup, etc. But we realized employees in junior levels were more impacted financially than employees at senior levels, right? So we looked at 3 installments of wellness stipend for our junior employees. We looked at interns, for example. Interns were not covered in our structured medical insurance program, but we looked at including their families as well, for example. We looked at creating an employee relief fund that could be made available for financial distress for our junior employee to meet tragic events or any financial drain that they looked at it, right? So I can go on and on, but I think, to answer your question, the crux of it was, as leaders, how could we create an environment that was more listening, more humble, as not only did work enter an employee's home, just being cognizant of that, but holding hands and, ensuring that they knew that we stood by their side, and they could trust and speak to us about any situation. And there are different situations, right? Beyond our policies, somebody's sister, somebody's brother, grandparents, that our policy would not normally have looked at all, right? But we ensured that every case, every situation, we didn't go by the academic construct of our precedent, but said we will support in every given situation that an employee brings to the table. And that's what I think inclusive leadership is.
Great. From flexibility and curiosity, which Gauri spoke about, to cultural intelligence, to enablement, being authentic, making employees feel authentic, empathy and collaboration, and a whole set of best practices which Jayanti spoke about. I'm sure you have much more to share with us. Let's hear what Ritu has got to tell us with her line of IT and IT governance, which is at the core of the entire work from home about which the country is proud about. In normal times, we won't even recognize the IT people. We don't even feel their presence. You feel they are more of a burden when they come and tell you that something has to be updated. Only when there is a crisis, we look for them. And managing this kind of individuals who feel thankless at some times. Ritu, we'd like to hear from you. What is it that we sustain and prioritize in inclusive leadership at such pandemic times?
Thanks, Bhavani. Thanks for the question. And thank you, first of all, for getting me included in this particular session. It's actually nice to share views with such diverse set of panelists. I mean, honestly, Gauri's viewpoint and Jayanti's point of view is like completely, it's like the entire spectrum of what actually is required by an employee. But when I think from the IT perspective, you're so right. It's like one function which is completely taken for granted. When you are at office, you expect everything is going to be working just as, as a dream. You don't expect any glitches coming in. You don't expect any, my laptop is not working, so, I should get a replacement laptop. These are things which are like kind of taken for granted. When this pandemic hit us, there were things that nobody was prepared for. And very honestly, while we as our organization, a huge organization, I would say, we are diverse in our businesses. We are diverse in our set of people, the type of people that we are all working with. There was a kind of back for all of us because we are a culturally an organization where we want to meet people, we want to see people, we want to do a simple handshake and like yes, be aware that the presence is there. Suddenly we are told that we're not required to come to office. We have to work from home. Work from home is not culturally acceptable or maybe easy for all of us in the current culture that we work in. So what do? We within a few days time we enabled everybody to be available on calls, on the laptops, on these virtual meetings, the virtual connect that we have. The issue that we faced were more from those particular businesses where we need to have people going at home. A simple example for just as an example, we have a gas business. From just think of it, the pipeline that's coming to your house, you have to go in. If, one particular person has to go to your house to generate the bill. How do we manage that? So these are issues which we kind of came up with solutions sitting back here because we cannot afford to put our own people under that stress of going and going to everybody's houses. Many people will not even allow you to come inside, but even if they allow, it's like putting your own people at risk. So what do we do? What was the way out for this situation? uh, we kind of empathize with our people. We kind of understood that they are in trouble. We cannot actually push everybody under the bus. That's not what we are culturally here for. So, one, what I experienced, we experienced extreme communication to that extent that we had communications coming across from the doctors in the organization, from the IT support, and we had to kind of, ensure that all types of communication reaches everybody. It is not just the negatives that, you would read during the newspapers and not the newspapers anymore. It's just the apps, the news apps that you would actually read through. But then how is it that we spread some positive communications? How is it that we ensure that, listen, you're stuck at home, don't worry. You've got your stuff with you. We've got your back. We've got everything saved for you. Just don't worry about it. The issues that would ideally come for people who are in remote areas. What is it that we would do? How is it that we would ensure that a person has to reach one particular area, which is the remotest of locations for a power thermal requirement or a power transmission requirement? How is it that you would ensure that people are presence is required. We've literally built applications overnight. Overnight, applications getting built, being sent out to these people that things can be handled through this app. You don't need to be there physically in person for resolving these kind of issues. So for me, what I experienced in this pandemic and what I saw work for this organization here was all about communication, extreme communication, empathy for each and every person, like who is there on the ground, on the field, and how is it that we can empower the person to be working from home rather than being physically present at all places. Of course, as Gauri mentioned, it is not possible for everything to be done from home. You have to have, for manufacturing plant, you have to have people there on the floor. But how is it that you de-risk those people? That's the empathy that you would actually think about. So this is what has actually worked for us in our current environment here. Um, Over to you, Bhavani.
Great, Ritu. Wonderful real life examples of collaboration, communication, empowerment for people, and making sure that there is more concentration on those people who are at a high risk. So to that extent, inclusion is all about making sure that people who need the most get the most. So that way, distinguishing between the people who are facing the risk in the pandemic is a wonderful thing to think about. So in other words, we have covered all those aspects of the 6 signature traits which you as leaders believe have been in the forefront. So I'd like to move to some specific questions based on the nature of industry and the work which our diverse panelists are engaged in day to day. So in a global research by Billie Jean King, Leadership Initiative, and Deloitte, in fostering inclusion, that was the research, 80% of respondents said that inclusion is important, and 39% said that they would move to an organization which is more inclusive and had a purpose in which they can feel belonged, and 71% valued working for an organization where leaders constantly demonstrated inclusive behaviors. Jayanti, you have led your organization to the recognition for 11 years by Great Places to Work, which is a great accreditation. And you would agree with me that at the fulcrum of diversity, equity, and inclusion is belongingness. What are your observations and experience in growing belongingness during the virtual era, where you had most of your people connected through the virtual environment and also serving customers in this virtual environment, which is pretty new to our country? Over to Jay.
Thank you, Bhavani. I think that's a great question. And really, like you said, at the fulcrum of, how we show up as a community, how we show up as an organization, and how we show up as leaders. I think you touched on the 6 traits as well, right? I mean, which has a very close correlation, the 6 signature traits that you spoke about. I would also add empathy to that. I know it doesn't start with a C, and it's probably somewhere in the, commitment collaboration piece. But I think for us, I know your question is on belongingness, but I think fundamentally, these 2 years have taught us how to think beyond the conventional, right? And number one is, for me, the prime is how do you think beyond the conventional with the vulnerability as leaders to accept that we don't have all the answers, that we could allow our leadership traits to not automatically take shape, right? For example, I mean, when lives were impacted all the more with the second wave, I would really admit that we felt helpless for some point in time, right? As an organization, it took us a lot of combined energy from our own employee groups, our own employee resource groups, our volunteers who actually guided us. And, we saw these groups mushrooming, and that gave us a lot of confidence and impetus to quickly ramp up to look at, okay, come on, let's really look at what additional support we can provide, right? Whether it is setting up the rapid response team or the emergency, or looking at, some additional COVID relief for our employees and so on. So I just wanted to, kind of share how more than anything any of the 6 traits, your curiosity, collaboration, commitment, empathy really became, fundamental. And I think belongingness, as you rightly said, it's core, right? It's no longer about looking at specific employee groups, as I shared earlier, right? It's not about individual situations. It's really about those very, very personal, situations. It's about new parents. How do we ensure that they feel belong to the organization? It's not just about childcare, that we all do a good job at childcare, but it's also about our parents-in-law, elder care, and our agility to tune our responses to that. So for me, most importantly, belongingness, people feel that they belong. If you look at unique situations like this, look at new employees, look at some of these specific groups and display a sense of empathy. For example, when an employee requests for a 2-hour lunch break, and we have some very rigid policies for some of our, especially frontline teammates, right? And we had to totally kind of reimagine how we work with those policies. A 2-hour lunch break because they needed to take care of an ailing family member takes precedence over a policy or a program that is set. We needed to understand that a kid or a pet interrupts a meeting. You need to open your heart to welcome that and welcome the fact that it is their personal space. So I think individuals will go a sense of belongingness when they know that they're being heard, when they know that their unique situations, are taken cognizance of, and there is a real intent to solve for them, right? And we did, like I said, the new joiner roundtables that we did. We did a session called Moments of Truth, where you just shared as is, no filters, no holds barred, what you felt stepping into a virtual organization. We did these leadership coffee connects where we found a lot of our leaders, kind of struggling, right? I mean, everybody looks at their manager and, their hierarchy and so on, but we saw those moments where they didn't know how to deal with it. So we created these lean in circles where they could come together and share their stories and experiences. The HR team, my team, did a lot of HRBP connects. The employee resource groups came in very, very, to the table and helped us bring the real sentiment to the table, right? So I think you pick a lot of nuggets from these conversations, Bhavani, which really help you to be agile in how you respond and how, it's almost a discovery process that you go through, right? Along with your employee groups in dealing with these unique situations. I think that's what was fundamental. And also to be guided by the fact that out of sight doesn't mean out of mind. There were some people who knew to stay connected in the virtual world. There were some people who didn't know how to stay connected in the virtual world, right? They didn't know how to use collaboration tools. So being cognizant of some of those people that you would have otherwise have totally missed. So for example, we also did away with our performance ratings last year, for example, because we knew there were these different kinds of situations, circumstances, and people that we are dealing with, right? And we didn't want to evaluate them on the same plane. So we said, we'll do increases, but no performance ratings. So I think it's a combination of many things, but high order for me is just developing that high empathy and trust.
The theme which comes from listening to all the best practices which you have spoken about, what you've employed in your company, is the importance of connect with people and make them feel included. In one of the recent studies by Ernst & Young, 39% of the respondents said that when the colleagues check in with them on their wellness, they had a great sense of belongingness. And as you said, out of sight, out of mind. Microsoft has come out with a tool by which it measures the airtime of all the people in the organization. So leaders get benefit by looking at that report to see who has not spoken during meetings or who the leader has not connected with. But all that is only tools. The intent of the leader is most critical. Wonderful, Jayanti. When we look at teaming and leading inclusively, results in 8 points increase in gross margin, 8 points are higher in terms of retention, and 4 points are higher in terms of revenue growth. Team collaboration is 57% better and innovation 3.5 times more likely just because of teaming. One of our very early leaders who broke stereotypes in the manufacturing industry in South India and became the president, Gauri, it's focusing on total employee involvement, an important measure of vibrancy and speed, to the total quality culture in Rane. How did your team promote the collaboration and teamwork? And how did you, Gauri, as a leader, ensure this culture of cohesiveness amongst your people? Let's hear you.
Thank you. As you already said, TQM is a very strong, etched in all our minds. And that's a good thing that happened. And when I look back at the history, TQM talks about three things. Number one is continuous improvement. Number two is total employee involvement. And all of this to achieve customer satisfaction. So these are the basic three elements of TQM. And continuous improvement during these 2 years, I think, like Jayanti said, Ritu said, everybody said, we had to be very flexible, very agile in our thought process, and continuously keep improving our processes such that we could deliver the ever-changing demands that was happening, may it be in terms of people, may it be in terms of customer, may it be in terms of equipment or anything. So we had to be completely flexible in that process to get ourselves all ready. And that's what we all did. I think the number of procedures which would have got changed, the number of new ways of how we are doing things has changed enormously, that it is a big, long list. It could, I don't think we can even write about it. Maybe sometime we should sit down and write all the new things that we discovered. It'll be a good book to for people to read, I guess. The other element of TQM is total employee involvement. Last year was a very rough year. We went back to our employees and said we were going to do a pay cut. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how welcoming our people were. I was so humbled to see such cooperation from every one of our employees, saying that they understood the situation that we were in. And I was even more humbled to see when the Great Place Work results came. You know, we were again certified and the ratings were very high. So obviously they all took a pay cut, worked so hard, had so many problems, yet they felt this was a great place to work. And that is because we always believed in people are the most important resources in our company. And culture was something that we've been working on for years to make sure that we are one cohesive unit. And we have worked on it not only now in the past, but now even more. Some of the things that we did is to have communication consistently all the time. It was just not only communication of a one-way dialogue. I think decision-making was easier when we had person one-to-one touch. But now I think we had to make extra efforts to make sure everybody was involved in the decision-making and it was not made in silos. Of course, the number of meetings therefore increased, and the stress on people because of that increased quite a bit. But still, we ensured that the decision making was made with everybody's consent. So we did a strategy business plan. We involved everybody exactly the way that we would have done when we were in person. Of course, it took a little longer time because we had to make sure that there was full collaboration in every element of it, so that we took everybody's ideas when we started developing our strategic business plan, which we do every year. So we took that extra effort in every business process to involve people in decision making. When we started this entire thing, we very well communicated to people that people's health was very, very important to us. And their well-being was very, very important to us. Because trust is something, it's a two-way street. If organizations don't build this trust, the other way it doesn't work. So the extra effort has to be taken by the organization to build this trust. And I think that's what PayPal did, and that's what Rane is doing, where we are all taking that extra effort to make sure people's well-being are taken care of. In fact, we have a 75 long checklist on how the plant has to be operated, what needs to be done when a person walks in, what happens to keep people safe. And there was a lot of communication that needed to go. In wave one was a little easier to deal with. Wave two was very, very difficult for us to deal with. because it was just not only the employees who were getting impacted, but it was the employees' families which were getting impacted. There were so many people who lost their loved ones due to this. And the kind of empathy that we had to provide during that was a lot. And we formed groups. It was very interesting how we formed groups. People known to them, the friends, HR would go around and say the friends of that person would be calling those people at times of distress continuously to make sure that they were safe, and they would come back and tell us if we had to do something specifically for them. So we didn't go with the route of every day calling. HR calls them and asks them, how are you? Because then that becomes a routine and it is just not personalized. So we said that the friends have to reach out to them to make sure that they understand their concerns and come back to us. So this provided a lot of trust in people. So we involve people in all our decision making throughout the pandemic. We enabled people with the different processes that need to be changed to make sure that their job was done effectively. And the third thing is, as leaders, at these times, you are stressed for profits. You're stressed for a lot of numbers to be hit. You'll be having customers, you'll be having all requirements. As leaders at that time, one important trait that we all have to show to the organization is patience. We have to make sure that people feel successful. So we need to be patient, allow people to become successful, provide goals with which people can achieve. And when they achieve those goals, they feel more successful. When they feel successful, the commitment automatically happens, and new things, new innovations, new everything new happens, and people go out of their way and really make you feel so small, saying that, oh my God, they're so capable. And that's the leadership trait I think we all followed. And last but not the least was our customers. Our customers were very supportive to us. They were making sure that they were also asking us what was possible, and they supported us through the entire process. And we together have been able to make a big change. So one of the motto that we have is that together we will win over COVID. And we are together trying to win over COVID and learn everything. Thank you.
Great. What a detailed account of cohesiveness, right from culture. Cohesiveness, connect with people, the consistency which you have been maintaining on quality, the communication, and also roping in your customers. How well you have been able to manage the cohesiveness through the pandemic. People in high trust companies, global companies report 74% less stress, 40% less burnout, 106% more energy, 76% more engagement. Responsible for IT governance in the metals and minerals division of the top 500 companies, one of them in an illustrious group focusing on trust, believing in its employees and stakeholders, Adani's core value. Ritu, how did trust in people pay out in the current times? And how do you think we can retain it in the post-pandemic era?
Thanks for the question, Bhavani. So, what I would like to so before I actually give what is it that we should be doing, what we did for the employee trust in this particular pandemic situation, it's literally like just as an if you want to take it as an analogy, as an example, when you're teaching your kid to drive a bicycle, what happens? You hold the bicycle for some time, and then he slowly he will learn and he will start running by himself. What happens? If you keep holding on to the bike, what will happen? You will have to run fast, or the child will fall down. The other thing is that you let the person go, let the child go. He's learned it. He'll move on. He will drive the cycle, and he will actually, make you proud some point in time that yes, you've taught him the right thing to do, him or her. I should not be specifying him here. So it's literally like we have taught the employees that this is what you need to do. This is how you collaborate. This is how you are doing stuff. This is how you're talking to people. This is what you need to do. After that, beyond certain time, you have to let go. When you are letting go, that's when the trust actually gets stronger. The commitment gets stronger. So what we realized in this particular pandemic situation is that micromanagement never helps. Initially couple of days, of course, you have to be more in the hand holding situation. Once you handhold, once you've kind of set the ball rolling, that's when you have to take a step back and take a conscious call for the people to be doing their job with full commitment, the way you are committed to it, the same way the entire team is committed. So that's what I've kind of we have learned out of this particular pandemic thing. What is it that we should continue doing? Simple situation. We continue trusting our people. We continue the commitment that we have kind of built, the kind of collaboration that we have built, the kind of trust that we have built on each other. Why is it that we can still say that I mean, empathy, as Gauri mentioned and as Jayanti mentioned, when there was a person whose family member is unwell, down with COVID, how is it that we were able to still tell the person it's okay, we can still manage the work, you take care of your family, that's more important, that's paramount. So how is it that we were able to manage in those days? Why is it that we cannot imbibe it in our own culture and continue the same thing? That if there is something that is requiring your attention at home front, please take care of it. Once you're done, we are happy to get you back here with a 100% focus instead of you doing a 20-30%, thinking about your family and thinking about work. You're kind of in a very different kind of a mind frame when you've got a family member who's not well. So these are things, I think empathy is something which we have kind of imbibed during this period. We know that there are family members, there are friends, there are close people who have gone through really troubled times specifically during the wave two. It's just created havoc for everybody. We have to now continue with the trust that we had built during that period when we said, let go of things, we will take care. When you're back, we are all together into it. We will take care. We will do it together. We will win together. So at Adani, we have our in fact we very proudly wear it on our badge as well. Courage, trust, and commitment. These are the three values that we live by, and we have literally seen the trust and commitment literally coming out in its bare form during this particular pandemic. So while it's easier said than done, it's a change in the cultural mindset. It's basically what is it that we can carry forward beyond the troubled times that we have been through? What is the learning that we can have? Why can we continue the good things that we picked up during the pandemic? Can we continue the trust? Can we continue to be as committed as we were during the pandemic? Even if we were spending long hours, even if we were taking breaks in between, we were still doing our work and ensuring that at least the work part of it did not suffer. You are earning your bread and butter end of the day. So when that is done, I think that's the one major thing which I would want us to carry forward after the pandemic when we are all back to office as well. It's this is something, the trust, the collaboration, the empathy as well. We need to carry it forward. That's my take on it. Over to you, Bhavani.
Thanks so much, Ritu, talking about trust and commitment and explaining how a true inclusive leader would let people do everything, take the risk on themselves, step back, and allow the employees to perform, and also allow them to say that they did it. What a classic example in Adani, which you have explained. And you've also told what you'd like to take back as a practice in your organization post the pandemic. So, Gauri, what are your thoughts on what you think the organizations and leaders should continue doing, returning to work in the post-pandemic era?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for this question because this is very close to my heart. Thanks for giving this opportunity to speak about it. I'm a strong believer of inclusivity. Today, if you look at any data, 64% of organizations say that they have a talent crunch. But there are many talented people at home. India has the highest rate of tertiary education, and most of our women get educated. But when it comes to making sure this talent pool is used, I think there's a lot of ways for us to go in this area. One of the things that we find is there is a talent crunch. We have the talent with the education there, but then we need to match them. For that, policies have to be very strong with companies. There are many policies that require quite a bit of thought to make it conducive to use this talent which is available. Many times we do have people, especially women, when they graduate, they do come to work. Then after that, there are a lot of these requirements that come to them in terms of childcare, in terms of elder care, and in terms of all the other responsibilities that they seem to fall through the cracks. So to make sure that that doesn't happen, I think this pandemic has taught us a wonderful lesson. It has really taught us that work from home is possible, flexible working hours is possible. There's a lot of technology that is available today that people can work only 4 hours. If that's all is the amount of time the person can give, they can work that and can be very seamlessly taken by another person and still complete the work. So there is so much technology, so much transparency, so much decision making that is made easy with all the technology that we have, that I think organizations should go back and look at how to utilize this talent pool, which is there with us. Because if you look at the labor rate, the number is abysmally down. And especially with the pandemic, we're seeing that the rate is going down of the number of women who are being employed. Women seem to be the first ones to lose their jobs than the men. So this is an opportunity for us to look at all this data and for organizations to enable an environment that is conducive to bring in more women into work. And I think that would be something the leaders who are listening to this, if they can take cognizance of that and go back and do some difference, it would not only help their organization, it would also help in bringing a good talent pool that is available.
Wonderfully said, Gauri. Jayanti, what do you want to focus on the returning to work of your people in the post-pandemic era?
Yeah, I really love what Gauri said, and what Ritu shared about how how we have really done it during this time. So how do we kind of carry the torch forward? Lovely thoughts there. For me, I think the front and foremost is, if the pandemic has taught us one thing, is that life is fickle and precious. We must value our wellness, our time spent with family, and how do we kind of carry that back as we come back to work is something that will be critical. Well, I like to believe that we have, as organizations, we have taken the right steps during the pandemic to help our employees with programs and benefits to equip a balance and prioritize wellness. I really would love this journey to continue. I think we should accept some of our cultural habits where we feel inclined to be available almost 24/7, right? It comes as a matter of, our DNA, I think. We want to, be loyal. We don't want to say no. How do you enable our people while keeping some of the good traits that we have to say it's okay to say no at times? It's okay to, not have a festival or a special event to celebrate your lives, but to just celebrate the moment that you're there in, right? And helping them find the right balance and prioritize wellness, I think will be key. Secondly, I also think we've come more closer as an organization thanks to the pandemic. We've celebrated virtually, we've done various, including our kids at event virtually. So how do I carry the goodness of this closeness, that we, and all the learning that we've had during the pandemic, and sustain some of that going forward as well? I think those are the two critical things.
So we've heard individual experiences and all the thoughts which they have shared. I'm going to do a short rapid fire round with my panelists. That's a bit of a surprise. It was just a last minute thought. So I'd like to have a one word or a one sentence answers from each of you. What is the one thing you did regularly during the pandemic in terms of being inclusive?
In terms of what? Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the one thing you did regularly as an inclusive action during this pandemic time.
For me, maybe I can, if I can go first, I would say listening to my team every single day. There's not been a single day where I have not spoken to my team or been in touch with them.
Thank you. Yes. Gauri, Ritu?
Consistent communication.
Consistent communication.
I think it's the same here. Communicate. I have been living by communication.
Okay. That's great. So consistent in your thoughts. The one thing which attracted your attention during the pandemic in terms of behavior, in terms of how we need to
Adaptability. How
adapt.
quickly we adapted and how quickly we hit the ground running.
Yeah. Gauri and Jayati?
Commitment of people.
Yeah. Jayanti?
I would say organizational agility. I think it's close to what Ritu said. How we can make things happen. I wish I could carry this, post-pandemic as well, right? Just our ability to make things happen as an organization, though being global, was much more agile. So,
Ritu?
For me, it was, I mentioned adaptability. I think it was.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what is the one thing you wanted to do more, which you couldn't probably do well for your people during the pandemic?
I think this is a tough one.
Yeah, take it.
Maybe I would have loved to give them more time with their family. That was something which probably because of the work pressure, I was not able to do as much. But if given a, I don't want that kind of a chance again, sorry, but I should not be saying that. But I would, if I rewind time, I would give them more time with their family.
Excellent. Yeah. Gauri and Jayanti?
Reduce the number of meetings.
Jayanti?
yeah, I'm honestly not able to think beyond what Gauri and Ritu said, but I would say this is for me personally as well as for my team is a discipline around wellness. I mean, I learned a lot from it. I need to get better at it, and I wish I need to cascade this to each of my employees. How important it is to stay safe and care about your physical fitness as well.
The one thing you all wanted to stop doing or minimize doing?
Meetings.
Here I tend to agree with Gauri. Reduce the number of meetings.
Already Gauri told us that. So now the last question in the rapid fire round. We spoke about the 6 competencies framework and the various other qualities of a leader. Tell me the one quality which strikes you most of all what we discussed today. One word.
Commitment.
Yeah, thank you. Gauri?
Enabling people.
Enabling people. Yes, wonderful. Jayanti?
Emotion and empathy for me.
Yeah, great. So before we open the floor for questions, any specific closing thoughts on the subject we discussed today, and then we will open it for any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I just want to have one point made. Many times we think about the negatives that have happened and we get flustered with the negatives that happened. It's important for us to get past that as organizations, as people, and say, how do we move ahead and look at the world differently. So the most important lesson that this entire pandemic taught me is we are capable of dealing with a VUCA world, and we can come out of it very well. That's the strength and courage this entire pandemic has taught me.
Couldn't have summed up better. Same, I would say +1 to that, Bhavani.
Yeah, please. Please.
No, I would say thumbs up to that. I don't think we could have summed it any way better than what Gauri said.
So, Rutu?
So I will just add one more thought to what Gauri mentioned. This pandemic has actually made us realize that we are leaders. We as leaders are here to serve. We are not here to be served.
Very wonderfully defined, wonderfully said. So it's now time for us to get the thoughts of our audience. And therefore, we'd like to ask you all to post your questions in the chat. Or do they have an unmute facility to speak? Then you're most welcome to speak and ask your question.
Yeah, unmuting the host has to do it. If they put up their hand, we can do that.
Yeah, because if people don't want to post in the chat box, or as questions come to your mind, you would like to speak, please feel free.
Analysts can.
We get news around. We get news around both extreme. In one side, we get during pandemic, there is being an opportunity used by organizations to retrench people for reasons best known to them. The other side, they try to increase their payback or give some other what are benefits that could be possible to retain them so that the talents do not flow away. Both are extreme. How do you think it will affect the mindset of the people in the organization?
Yeah.
Very difficult to handle as an HR.
Yeah, Jayanti, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think, from our experience, we've seen, yes, a lot of people, we've heard of businesses which had to scale or jobs that had to be, cut down. But the other flip side is that we are also hearing industries, a lot of segments, including our own, for example, we are in the financial services space. So we are looking at reimagining our own products, where people don't want to use as much cash. So it's been a great point in time for PayPal, and we are hiring aggressively as well, right? So somewhere I think along the line, and hopefully I'm betting on this, that it will get equalized. But you're also right. How do companies look at a standard set of, how do you equalize, right, across industries, across companies in this scheme of thing is not something that's easy. I think every organization has to stand true to its fundamental values and do what it considers right for its people. I know a lot of organizations that have retrenched, also putting out posts back to rehire people. There's a lot of organizations that have come up with good alumni, rehire kind of programs as well. A lot of organizations are also, I think Gauri spoke about it, are looking at rehire programs or come back to work kind of programs for women and some segments that have, lost their jobs. In fact, our own program called Recharge, we're looking to expand it beyond just women coming back to work to anybody that's lost out or lost their jobs coming back to work. So I know that it's not a single size fits all, but I think as a HR community and as a leadership community, we need to think through how to equalize this phenomenon. It's a great question, Dr. Ravi, right? It's a great question. I think you've given us also food for thought to understand as a community, and as a professional body, how do we think about equalizing, and making it even better, considering what we've gone through.
No, the reason
people are very understanding as well.
The reason why I pose this question is, besides financial commitment, it is going to have a psychological impact on the individual. So is it necessary at this juncture to have counseling as part of HR policy compulsorily from now on?
Yeah, I think so. And I think organizations have already started doing that. It's a great call. For example, we have what we now call wellness mentors in our organization, who we earlier used to call employee assistance program support, whatever, saying wellness mentors. So people there's still a stigma of going to a counselor, right? So how do we design programs there? People feel open enough to talk to somebody, that they know is kind of anchoring around their wellness. And we've seen, to your point, exactly to your point, we thought we were doing all the right things, right? And we have a wonderful set of programs and policies, but I can tell you every week, the appointments get full and there is always a queue waiting to meet the wellness mentor. So you're absolutely right. I think a lot of impetus on physical, psychological, emotional, and financial counseling, becomes critical. And I think as organizations, we're all doing our bit to, to kind of revamp our story. Bereavement counseling as well is something that has kind of unfortunately become critical during these times, with a lot of our people losing family members, extended family, and so on. Like I said earlier, I think wellness has to adapt, has to be thought about in a very different proportion than what we as HR professionals or leaders are thinking about today, and beyond the realm of just physical. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Jayanti. Anybody else would like to ask any questions?
Yeah, I think there are some questions, Bhavani, I could see. Whatever we have answered, I will avoid. There is a question, of course, the same thing as what Dr. Ravi said. How to address the mental health issues of your employees in this challenging times with increased stress and work timings, more for women, I guess. I am adding that, but that's one question that's posed.
Can I take that if it's for women? Because I'd like to share the experience of mine during this pandemic, if that will be any solace to anybody. So this pandemic, work from home was the most challenging, both day one and day two. As a woman, you're here trying to attend meetings, and then you don't have support staff. Your maids are not there. If you had a support system that is not there right now, is working women, we all had found our own ways of having our support system, and that wasn't there. You're doing that plus attending meetings, so you have this mental stress within you, because as women we kill ourselves to be 100%. We kill ourselves to say that we have to be perfect in everything that we do. So if I worked in a particular way, when I was working from office, I expect the same output or better because I'm working from home. And here I'm doing the calculations, so I'm not working, I'm not traveling, so that is an extra time I have. So how do I contribute? And I was just killing myself. The one thing that was a lesson to me was, more than anybody helping, I felt I had to help myself. And the way I felt I had to help myself is to first stop feeling guilty. Second, stop feeling being this perfectionist I wanted to be. Let go and live. And be confident that you're doing a good job. Be trusting of the organization, because human beings at the end of the day are good. 99% of all of us are good. It is only circumstances which cause organizations which are run by human beings to make certain decisions. So if you got fired, it doesn't mean that you are bad. It is just that the organization made a decision to make itself survive. And it doesn't matter, when things go up, you will find a job, and don't feel bad the fact that you lost a job or anything like that, because that is only going to create a lot of negativity. Just look at it positively and see that the world can be positive. So those are some thoughts I just thought I'd leave.
Yeah. Does Jayanti or Ritu want to add anything to that?
I think Gauri said it well. I think the importance of our community circles, right? What we call lean in circles or just our friends circles, I think becomes critical during these times. And I can speak personally for me as well. I think I can relate to everything that Gauri said, right? You have a bad day and you're just stressing out and you feel like, you're not able to cope. you pick up the phone and talk to somebody that you can share your thoughts with, or understand what they are going through. And it's sometimes good to know that they're also going through something similar, right? You're not alone, in this journey. So how do we enable more of these circles within our community, within our organizations? I think will be critical. I'm sure the Chamber of Commerce also can look at doing something more programmatically to ensure that, the women's thing that you've started can enable this kind of a storytelling, right? Or just sharing of experiences that will enable other women as well. Enable anybody, but also for women, because I think the challenges are even more starker there.
Yeah.
Just to take one more views from the panelists. See, we are all seeing that work from home gives a lot of benefit from the organization perspective because the work flows on, there is no disturbance. How do you think the family harmony, does it get strengthened or the disharmony gets widened because work from home culture?
Can I take the question? Mr. Balakrishnan, I think this is an interesting question because it's got both ways. Because you find everything intruding too, because at home, you have a crying child, in my case, a crying husband too. So sometimes, you're faced with so many challenges. Some people are crying pets, and so many responsibilities are there, and they come in the way of you working. So then you snap a lot. You have a mental stress that is there, and then you tend to overreact to situations. So the one solution which helped me, which I would like to share, is having something called a me time for myself. I used to set aside during the day and certain periods of time, which is my me time. Those me times can be when I watch a YouTube, which I like to see, or it could be I could talk to a friend of mine, or I could just sit silently and not think about anything and just watch out of my window. So this me time is very, very important if you have to get the sanity of yours going, and a proper family setup that is there, because otherwise it's going to stress out everybody in the family. And there have been situations where some of our employees have told us that both the husband and the wife are working, so there's always this division of labor on who's going to do the household chores, and there's a lot of arguments which probably come out because of that too. So it is difficult. I'm not saying it is easy, but we need to find a way to overcome this, and over a period of time I think we will also learn how to overcome this.
Let me add to what Gauri said. Dr. Ravi, in cultures other than our own country culture, it is the first thing which people did is change their profile picture. They took the picture with the child or with the pet, and they were all made to feel guilt-free that the office has entered the home space. So it's not incorrect if a child interrupts a meeting or if a pet interrupts a meeting. That guilt feeling should be done away with, because the home space has been encroached by the office. So training people to not feel guilty is something which would reduce their stress to a large extent, because what happens is we are conditioned in our mind that it should be an office setup. So that is that we are able to let go that feeling and see how much we can do in the setup at home, then half the stress gets reduced is what I have seen with the mid-management and senior management women realizing that. So great. There are other, sorry, Ravi, you were saying something.
No, I didn't say anything.
Okay.
I just thought the views and I'm happy.
There are questions on vaccination. There are questions on how management would address the concerns of people. But it is employee concerns we have addressed, but that of management. We are talking about leadership competencies and how these leaders have exhibited inclusivity. So the leader population, which is not here, obviously their primary concern is being inclusive to employees. There are certain questions which are on other topics, which probably we would not have the luxury of time to take it up now. Saraswati, any specific question you want us to address before we?
No, I think we have done most part of it. So
Yeah.
probably,
Yeah, okay.
unless you want to give any closing thing, we can move to Mr. Kesavan to
Yeah.
propose a formal vote of thanks. And
Sure. So the pandemic and the lessons have given us a renewed sense of energy for sustainable change in leaders, and resilience has become the order of the day. We have lived to prove Mahatma Gandhiji's vision, where he said, our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization. Where we have now risen to promote global inclusion with our own declaration at G7 by our Honorable Prime Minister. Look at that inclusive statement, one earth, one health, which is the objective of India. What more do you need as an example of how inclusive India is during this pandemic? So thanks a lot, and over to Sri Kesavan to propose the vote of thanks.
Thanks a lot for. I think this is one of the very, very, why do I say inclusive? I think it is one of the wonderful programs I've attended. And when I came in, I didn't realize the depth in which the program is going to go. And I think this is the team of women. I can actually very easily say that probably took the crown as far as the leadership is concerned. And believe me, I think you people have set an example that woman or man, I think the most important leadership is human. I think that's, I think what you have really brought out. I think that's brilliant. And just to put a few thoughts from what you people talked about, I think I'll go with, but I'll start with Ms. Bhavani talking about inclusive leadership. Leadership is a journey. And I tend to agree because I think for me, it's a never ending journey because as you keep moving, world is changing around us, expectations are changing around us. So it's a really, really a long journey. And one thing which we learned today, again, I'm quoting Bhavani, is we realized that we are connecting with people very differently. But here, Bhavani, there's only one thing I differ is I think we are connecting with people more with empathy. I think that is something has been missing, and we have really started learning how to empathize a little more. And another point you brought out was uh, an intended leadership is more important, is just not tools. I think intended leadership is beyond the tools what you use. I think it's amazing, these points. I think I'm going to note it down because I think this is not applicable to this forum. I think this is applicable to a larger forum in general. I'm going to come to Ms. Ritu Singh, and I know that you people have done a lot in your area. See, one thing, for IT, one of the biggest problem all of us had is, I mean, this is human. What we don't touch and feel, you don't experience. And unfortunately, IT till today, nobody had the touch and feel. But I know it was always a backbencher. But I think, believe me, what has IT has become, because we have been using it extensively, I can tell you that IT has become an enabler, an executor, and also an entertainer. Because I think without all these three, I think would have been in trouble, both at the office work, at the home work. Okay, this is something we have realized it. And digital, what people didn't realize, it can be tactical, it can be result oriented, it can be driven by data, it can be guided by AI. I think is becoming proven more and more today. So this is a huge change. For me, this pandemic has created such a huge force in India, which is the digital. I think India would have been lacking, but I think this has actually opened out a big platform, and I think we will gain a lot out of a pandemic. I'm going to come to this at a different time. I'm going to talk about it. And another thing you really talked about is employee trust. And brilliantly said, handholding and leaving at the right time. I think that is what is all. Otherwise, what happens is you do micromanagement or you try to create clones. And there is nothing like clones. And I've seen a lot of leaders trying to create clones. Believe me when I say this. So another thing, very nicely said, we are all leaders. We are just not here to serve. I think if every one of us can think in this direction, I think we are creating a new set of, how do I call, I won't call them employees anymore. I call them a collective working people. Then I'm going to come to Ms. Jayanti that acceptance to realities and acceptance to that one size does not fit all. Jayanti, let me tell you, I think we are actually breaking the glass ceiling of HR. Because HR for me has always been, I got standard size shoes. If it doesn't fit, cut your leg. And I know the HR has changed a lot during the pandemic. And I can see it's a few people laughing about it. We all gone through this rigmarole. So we know exactly what is happening and what changes we have been noticing. And I think this is a plus point of the pandemic. Let's be honest about it. And the thinking beyond conventional. I think harvesting combined employee energy during adversity, a very important point which came about. I think all of us talked about empathy and emotional management and something which is beyond covering the family members. See, believe me when I say this empathy and emotional management for individuals also, when we were actually working from office, covering that empathy or family members always took a back seat. Right or wrong, that's a reality. Every one of us really think and through, you realize, yeah, I gave the second importance to the home front. I think that has changed a lot in the pandemic. We have created a work-life balance. And my genuine belief is women has handled it very well. And I think being a man, I have to tell, I think we also handled it extremely well because we have survived together for 18 months. So I think it's great. So personal time for people, wellness or mentor, all very well said. Gauri, actually, you really talked about, I think the biggest learning has been for the manufacturing industry. Because we always thought that udhar nahi rahega to kaam nahi hone wala hai. And unfortunately, when we are not there, the work is going on, so we think we are not needed. So that is the other worry. So we come back to that. So that is the thing which happens to a lot of us. And collaboration of teamwork, you talked about cohesiveness. And I think the way you put a continuous improvement as agility to ever-changing demand, I think we covered it early, and culture of oneness to the goal, which is actually the total employee involvement. Unless you feel that, you never move. And of course, we are not meeting in person. It's a big problem. But I think we are getting out of it. And you said very well said, trust is a two-way traffic. And a lot of people don't realize it, that they all think that it's always one way. And the next thing you talked about was technology, transparency, and the utilization of talent pool. I think Ravi asked a question, retrenchment versus improved condition. And you said, we think of negatives, but we also need to look at positives. Many a times, Phoenix has to rise from the ashes. I know some people suffered, but if you can learn and come out of it and make life better, I think the new way of working, the IT, enable today, everybody don't have to be in city to work. In fact, we ran all the tractor areas where we are giving free rental by people working from absolutely remote villages by IT connectivity. I'm going back to Ritu saying that, ma'am, what has made it happen was that bandwidth or today what people had there. He does not have to come here and set work. So I think that's what is changing. And this is going to bring in many, many people back into work. Women can work without sacrificing both sides of the coin. So I think this is going to change. So, and you rightly said, stop being guilty. Thanks for saying less perfection also works. I think that is something I learned in the last 18 months. Less perfection works very well. You don't need to be perfect at all. And the me time, see, to be extremely honest, this is the first time I lived with my wife for 18 months together. Otherwise, 20 days in a month, ever since my marriage, I was traveling. Okay. And the balance, 10 days back, I think half the time I was spending in the office only. So today I'm really happy that I can actually retire and still live together. So it's a great boon which has happened with the pandemic. So I think let us think that through. And informal see, I think the one point I want to raise up to all of you here is we talked about formal organizations in the pandemic. Kindly think of the informal organization in the pandemic, which has been trying to serve the community. Which are all people, because they have the enthusiasm to serve, some commitment to serve, they are still serving. I think we need to give them also a hand clap, because I think we did because we are working and linked to the office. But see the kind of people who have been working or not linked to the office, or the frontline workers who sacrifice everything, seeing somebody dying in their own team, but they still continue to work. I think that's a different. So I think that has given a huge amount of maturity to the country. Yeah, I want to end saying that, see, there is always a staying in the country, because I started this with, as I think is very different. They said, Yatra naryastu pujyanti ramante tatur devata. What it actually means is, when the women are honored, then they are God in this. There is the time where the gods rejoice. The reality, what happens in India, I mean, I always believe this in an Indian community, the concept of Ardhanarishwara. We always believe that woman and man has equal place as far as the world is concerned. I think sometimes you tend to forget, and sometimes you think one is above the other. I think unless we change this, because in India, everything which served, we always put it in the female name. Whether in Indian ethos, Earth is a goddess. When it is talked about, we always talk about Mother Earth. And the same thing with most of the rivers, maybe one exception, maybe Brahmaputra. So if we really look at it, I think looking at woman and man differently, I think that is going to drastically change. I think that is going to be the big learning out of pandemic. And I really, really appreciate this wonderful team who sat together and gave all the points. And it was brilliant. I mean, Bhavani, I think the way you cut in your questions, it was very interesting. I think I really enjoyed it. Let me tell you that. And I need to thank everybody, members of the WC. I think I'm not going to call the women's team and the leadership team. I think when I say women's team, I think I'm degrading you now. You are much beyond all that. So I think let me be blunt in saying that the members of the leadership team, and obviously the participants, and as usual, the chamber secretary. I every time ask to repeat this, saying that they always do a great job. And I always believe, and we used to talk about it, is why not? It's something nicely done, we need to appreciate. And so I don't think it was just a vote of thanks. I think something really came from my heart. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for meeting all of you and saying great job. Well done. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Keshav. So, Bhavani was wondering, or we were feeling that we didn't have a male panelist. So we have had it, Bhavani. So it's complete now.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thanks all the panelists, and thanks all the participants. Have a safe, happy week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.